Welcome to the Kansas Forest Service podcast, the podcast that tells the unique stories of the men and women dedicated to forestry and wildland fire in Kansas. Each month, you will gain insight into the ways our staff and partners protect and manage forests, woodlands, and windbreaks for all Kansans. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 14 of the Kansas Forest Service podcast. I'm your host, Cassie Wondersea, and today I've got Chris Mullins with me, who is one of our district foresters, and he is based down in South Central Kansas, office out of Hutchinson. Welcome, Chris, and thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, Cassie. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be on the podcast.
Yeah, so today we're talking all about harvesting native fruits, and I know you've been out recently doing a little harvesting yourself.
Oh, yes, most definitely. It is that time of year, middle to late July. The sandhill plums are just thick out, in northern Rice County, Reno County, Keeman County. I mean, they are just everywhere. I was asked by the Conservation Tree Program to collect some seed for their fall seed sales, and we were very fortunate enough to get on a private landowner who was more than happy to help share the multitude of seed he had on the place, and we collected seed in the rain and had a great time, and brought a whole bunch of bags back to the state office.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm sure the guys in Manhattan really appreciate that too, because having those good local seed sources is really important to those conservation seedlings.
Definitely they are, and just getting that genetic variety, just to, when people are buying those seed sources from the Conservation Tree service, that we have those areas, they're grown locally here in Kansas, and you're not buying, seed from Georgia or Michigan or something that might not handle the tolerance that Kansas weather will throw at these shrubs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the weather can get a little crazy here sometimes, so
Yes, it can.
Understatement of the century right there.
Yes, for sure.
So Chris, in addition to going out and helping out with some harvest on these sandhill plums, what else are some of the things you do as a district forester?
So as district forester, we have a lot that is encompassing in our job. We do everything from like extension, people call about sick trees, insect problems, to in my district, we have a lot of windbreaks that are in poor condition, and these people want to renovate those windbreaks using federal cost share money. So we do a lot of that. I do a lot of timber stand improvement in my eastern counties, and we do everything from pollinator patches to, guys calling just, hey, Chris, do you know anything about deer? Do you want to get, can you help me attract more deer to my property? So we go out and look at their place and suggest what trees and shrubs would work well there, or if they did have a timber stand on, doing cuttings to help with nut production.
Yeah, and I know just from our personal conversations and side conversations at work that you're pretty passionate about the wildlife angle.
Most definitely.
And forestry. So from your perspective for wildlife, what's your favorite fruit for wildlife, or personally your favorite fruit to harvest?
I might get a little flack from this, but red mulberries are my favorite tree and favorite fruit / wildlife tree that we have in the state. Hutch kid, born and bred, and long story short, I was a mulberry fan, and I just loved going in the back, getting my hands covered in purple and my teeth covered in purple and eating mulberries. But mulberry tree is great for wildlife. It's got high protein in the fruit and in the leaves. And, for me, I love the fruit, and so do the birds. And it's just a cool tree, and it's great for firewood. So it's just an all around tree that we have in Kansas, and it can grow in places where a lot of our higher value trees cannot. So it's just kind of one of those things. Sandhill, Kansas, Chris Mullins, red mulberries. That's my thing.
That's like you're going to show up at a conference and that's what you're known as.
Yes, yeah, that's the mulberry guy.
That mulberry guy again. All the other foresters go crazy for bur oak, but no, not Chris. He's that mulberry guy.
Yep.
But I'm with you there. Like I remember as a kid, like having a big mulberry tree in the yard, and my grandma would come up from New Mexico to visit, and it was just the coolest thing for me to go out and pick like a huge bowl of mulberries to have for like our breakfast cereal every morning.
Yeah.
But now as an adult, when I walk through the yard, I've got 2 big mulberry trees in the front yard, and I'm in my sandals, and I come back in and there's like mulberry goo in between my foot and my sandal, and the bottoms of my feet are purple.
Yeah. And it tracks on the carpet, and then your mom
Oh,
mad. I mean, I remember those,
yeah.
but it's just one of those, it's a cool tree, especially in the wildscape, not necessarily a great tree in town because
Mhm.
poop and everything of that nature, but it is a fun, cool tree that I really enjoy. And so it's just one of those things, high in vitamin A, vitamin C, riboflavin, or whatever that one is. It's a healthy tree. And then surprisingly, the fruit's available, late May, early June, and it's still producing pretty heavy throughout most of the sandhills here in South Central Kansas. So, I mean, you can get it all the way into August and there'll still be mulberries on trees, just, here or there, not like it's blown up everywhere, but which is,
Yeah. Yeah, it is nice to have that longer season to
yeah.
harvest. So what are some other fruits that people might notice right now that are ready to harvest, or maybe we've missed the window to harvest them, or,
Yeah.
or coming up pretty quick?
Apricots just finished, and that's kind of one of those trees where it's really finicky on our spring weather. This year we had a late frost, which we thought was really going to impact the sandhill plums. Turns out it didn't, and we thought, for sure apricots weren't going to happen, but they did. They popped up. They're pretty much done now. I would say, July 4th time is when you're really going to find apricots, and you find them in, wetter areas. There are some state parks around central Kansas that have them. There's a ton eastern portion of Kansas. So something to look for right now. The big thing is coming on, our blackberry bushes are really pumping, but there's another, it's kind of invasive. If you're collecting them, they have like cat-like claw thorns. So not a great selection of, hey, I'm going to get in there and try to grab some blackberries without getting shredded. But they're delicious. So you
Mhm.
can find those along roads too, in northern Reno County, Rice County, and stuff like that, just along the roads. I mean, even you get into the Flint Hills, there's quite a few. So that's another one you can look out right now. Later in the year, come more August to early October timeframe, the persimmons are really starting to come on. They're super green right now, so you're not going to be eating them. But that's something to really look for in the fall. And if you haven't had persimmons before, they have a great flavor to them. They do have a lot of seeds. It's kind of a weird texture. It's hard to explain. It's kind of like a nutty flavor to it. The deer just love them. And I mean, if you're a wildlife person, or if you're a bow hunter or whatever, it's like right in prime time. I mean, the persimmons are on the tree even into November sometimes. So that's
Oh,
something
wow.
for eastern Kansas. Pawpaws are really starting to put on later in the summer. I don't deal with them a lot, so I don't have a ton of experience with pawpaws, but if you can beat wildlife to them, they are pretty good. So that's something you can look for here in Kansas. There's a ton of other stuff. Our fragrant sumacs are starting to put on stuff. You can make jams, jellies with them. Rose hips, like our wild rose, I know people that make jams out of those. So there is a ton of information out there of where you can find and what you can eat and what you can't eat here in Kansas. So,
Mhm.
before you go out and collect stuff, make sure you have, a recipe in mind, or an idea of what you want to do with them before you just go out there and just, shotgun shoot and try to pick a bunch of stuff and then nothing happens with it.
Yeah, or pick the wrong thing and make yourself
Exactly.
sick.
Exactly.
That wouldn't be
There
fun.
are some, not everything that looks purple in late summer is good to eat. There are some very toxic plants that we have here. Moonseed. You typically, if you ate a moonseed berry, you would know it's rank. So it's not
Mhm.
like you'd be like, oh, this is great. But if you're a child or something, you wouldn't really necessarily know. It is toxic. Pokeberry, this, later in the year, is toxic as well. I know some people will eat pokeberry greens early, but the later the pokeberry plant grows, the more toxic it becomes. So just be aware that not everything out there is edible.
Yeah. So check a good, reliable field guide or a tree ID book or fruit ID. And I would always advise people, if you question whether it's edible or not, err on the side of caution and probably don't eat it. That would be
Most definitely.
best to
There's
go.
no excuse for poisoning yourself with wild plants this day and age, especially when you have a cell phone. Most everyone has a cell phone in their right pocket, so they can pull it out and look. And if you have any questions,
Mhm.
even your local extension agents might be able to help it out,
Mhm.
or us at the Forest Service. So there's always good outlets there where you can call and say, hey, I saw this, is this edible or whatever, and likely they'll be happy to help.
Yeah. And if those folks don't know the answer, they could definitely send you in the right
Find someone.
direction
Exactly.
for information there. So talking about harvesting, what are some of the best harvest practices that we should follow as far as how much fruit should we take from a single plant? Because there's those seeds. I mean, the fruit is there to create
Yeah.
seeds so the plants continue to grow, and lots of wildlife rely on those for food sources. So what's some advice you have there, Chris?
And that's really going to depend on the fruit quantity of that year. For example, last summer, we had a late freeze that hammered all the sandhill plums. There was very, very, very few production on sandhill plums. That's a year I wouldn't recommend, your average Joe to go out there and try to collect as many sandhill plums as possible, because there wasn't that many. You might have a 4-acre shrub patch of sandhill plums that have 6 or 7 sandhill plums on them. Not going to be worth your time anyway, let alone the wildlife that might really rely on that sandhill plum as being just a supplemental food source for them. Could use it. So our kind of a rule of thumb, if it's a good year, you can take 2/3 or whatever, and there's thousands left over. Like this year, there's areas where you can collect truckloads and not even make a dent. Just be aware that you're not the only one that's relying on them, and we as humans don't necessarily need them. So our wildlife can heavily rely on them, especially on years of drought and late
Mhm.
that type of stuff, and there's not a huge variety. So I would leave just a respectable amount, if that makes sense. We can make our own decisions, but it's kind of one of those things where you want to be conscious that you're not the only one that's going to be taking advantage of that shrub.
Yeah, absolutely. So this time of year, what sort of wildlife could somebody expect to see out, maybe
Oh,
browsing on
I
the?
would say with sandhill plums, you name it. The deer are hammering them. Moms with fawns. Milk production is super important this time of year for those fawns, and so those does are coming in there and hammering those sandhill plums, trying to eat as much as possible. Raccoons will be in there. I've seen coyotes eat sandhill plums. Weird, I know, but they do sometimes. Just a wide variety. It's also a cool place to do some photography and stuff like that too, because the amount of birds that you'll not normally see are in there, eating the sandhill plums. And then, our turkey poults are coming through, especially with our turkey populations being down right now. They're really, using the sandhill plums, not only for the fruit itself, but collecting, eating the bugs and the high protein from the bugs that are in the fruit that's fallen. So just be aware that, there's a ton of birds, ton of animals that really rely on these fruits as well. So just be conscious of that when you're out there collecting.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting too that you mentioned the bugs that are there and feeding off the fruit that's fallen off of it. You always kind of forget about that insect
Yeah,
aspect
you
of
can. And,
these.
there's some swallowtails that are migrating through right now. And I've seen them on big patches of mulberries that are rotting, and even sandhill plums. And you're just like, what? That doesn't make sense. It's a butterfly. But yeah, they'll take advantage of, the sugar that's available there. And, our pollinators in general, will use it for the pollen. But then again, our other insects that are on the forest or on the grassland floor or forest floor or whatever will come through and use that fruit when it's decaying. So it is a cool little experience, especially if you haven't been out and seen it. This is, just a wide variety of wildlife, and just relies on this type of stuff.
Yeah, it's really amazing how multifunctional so many of these trees and shrubs are that are producing fruit this time of
Mm-hmm.
year. I'm just constantly amazed. So,
Yeah.
where would you advise? Where can people go to harvest, or where should they harvest at?
Great question. I would say the majority of the state is privately owned. Uh,
Mhm.
if you do see a huge patch, sandhill plums, for example, that's, you drive by and you're like, oh, there's a bunch of reddish, purplish berries or plums on these shrubs when you're driving by on the road, you can call those landowners. More than likely, they'll be happy to let you get out there and collect them. But I would always call private landowners before you go and trespass on anything. Um, your state parks and public areas are a place where you can collect, but just be aware that some areas are you'll have to check in with an app called iSportsman to go out there and collect. Some areas they don't allow you to collect at all for a refuge. So if you have a state park or a lake close to you, I would call that state park and even ask them, be like, hey, do you guys have any sandhill plums? Where can I find them? Are we allowed to collect them? That type of thing. They're a great resource of finding locations on where to collect them, and they'll probably be happy to help you. They might even come out with you and help you collect, so they can go home and make sandhill plum jelly themselves. Just a good outlet is just to call. If you've never done it before, just call people. And there are also people that make sandhill plum jellies as part of their job. They just do it on the side, and you can always call them and ask them. You're like, hey, never done it before, would you mind teaching me the proper canning methods, where to collect, that type of stuff? So there's a lot of good avenues out there to learn how to do this stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. And I would definitely say too, with that public land aspect, just be mindful that there's probably going to be a little more pressure on those areas, more people out collecting. So definitely only take what you need, to leave it for the next person that might want to come through and harvest, or for that wildlife aspect. And
Most definitely. Most
yeah.
definitely. Oh, a lot of the people that do the canning and the jammings as part of a side gig or a full-time job or whatever, they will clean out a few bushes in a big patch, and you won't even notice really on the grand scheme of things that they're taking everything that's close to being ripe or being ripe, and they'll ripen the stuff that's not close to being ripe, but then they'll leave a whole bunch for everyone else or for the wildlife. So they're very conscious in what they're doing. They do it full time, and it just goes to show you that they sell a bunch of it and they don't need to take everything. So a little goes a long way with sandhill plums. There's plenty of recipes online where you can tell you, they can give you a guesstimate on how many pounds of sandhill plums you'll need to make so many quarts of sandhill plum jelly and stuff like that. So there's a ton of outlets and ton of people that will be more willing to help, if you're interested in doing this type of stuff.
So Chris, do you do canning and any preserving yourself?
Well, I would say my better half, the Nay, did a bunch this spring. We did apricot jam, and we've just finished a bunch of sandhill plum jelly. So I might be the collector, which I was collecting of it, and then she did the canning and jamming and stuff like that. And we're actually going to be doing some either tonight or tomorrow. We have a big, huge 1 gallon Ziploc bag full of sandhill plums in the fridge, and that'll probably make 6 small cans of sandhill, and that's more than enough for us for the whole year. So
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because I mean, there's so many different things out there right now that you can go and harvest and make jams or jellies out of, or preserve by freezing for something later. I decided my COVID project this year, I was going to put in a big garden and try to become, self-reliant, you know,
Mhm.
why not? I've got more time at
Yeah.
home. And so I made red bud jelly
Okay.
this year.
How'd it turn out?
It's actually pretty good. It's very
Okay.
very floral.
Cool.
It's different. Maybe we'll have to swap. I'll bring you some
Okay.
red bud jelly, and I'll try
Deal.
some of your sandhill plum, because I haven't been
Deal.
out to harvest any at all. So
I would say they are this week. They are pumping extreme, and they're all coming ripe at the same time. So wouldn't imagine they're going to be that many available in the next few weeks. So now is the time. If you
yeah,
want to go and get sandhill plums, now is the time to go out there and get them.
yeah. So are there any other like fruits in Kansas that are native, that are like big tickets for people to want to harvest and make those jams and jellies out of?
I'm not. Sandhill plums probably number one in my area where I know people are out actively collecting sandhill plums. The American plum, their relative in the eastern part of the state. We do have American plums here, the people go out there and collect them. They taste more like your traditional plum. They're not as tart as the sandhill plums, if that makes any sense. But this year, for most of my district, for some reason, they just did not put on fruit like the sandhill plums did. I don't know if it was because they, came to bloom earlier and we had a frosty kind of stuff earlier, or what it was. But for some reason, they just have not produced like the sandhill plums did this year. Golden currant, people will use that for jellies, but that's something that we don't normally see. I would say sandhill plum's the one. I've seen a lot of mulberry stuff, so mulberry jams and jellies are popular as well.
Yeah, well, and if you have it your way, that mulberry jam is gonna become more popular than the sandhill.
It is, and people will make wines out of both of them. I guess the mulberry wine is not great. I have not had it. I've had wild grape wine before, and it's pretty good, but mulberry wine, I guess, doesn't have a lot of flavor, and so they add grape juice to it. So I'm like, are you really drinking mulberry wine? I'm not for sure, but they do that with sandhill plums too. So there are, multi-uses outside of just eating them fresh and making jams and jellies. People can make wines, people can make cakes, that type of thing. So Google's your best friend when it comes to some of this stuff. So something to try. Just make sure you're following your protocols, your safety protocols when it comes to proper canning and proper cooking, and then eating the fruit as well, and identifying the fruit as well.
Yeah, and we're definitely, our next guest that's going to come on, Karen Blakesley with Research and Extension, is going to talk a lot about those safe canning practices, using good recipes. So yeah, but highly important to follow those good sanitation and safety steps when you're canning and preserving anything.
And plus, it'll last longer. If you up or don't follow, protocol, your canning won't be good for months. It could only be good for like a week or two, and that's something you do all that work for a week or two, and you're probably not even going to get even halfway through the jam. Like, okay, well, that was a waste of time. So try to do it. Follow. People have put this stuff into place for a reason, and you can learn a lot.
Yep. So one last question for you, Chris, as we're thinking about building habitat for wildlife or windbreaks, do you suggest that people build in that edible shrub or tree portion of it, or how are you integrating that into plantings that you're suggesting?
I personally do, and especially if you have kids or grandkids, it will make you care about your windbreak when otherwise you might not care about it at all. Other than it can be a chore to get out there and water your windbreak, or weed eat or mow your windbreak, or just if you have a piece and you have a windbreak in place, you can plant those shrubs that are you're able to go out there and collect the fruit, or you just want to do a pollinator patch to attract pollinators in the spring. And it's just a good, if you care about it, you're going to take care of it, and you're going to love it, and you're going to use the fruits of your labor. So I say yes, the majority of the stuff I do is more wildlife based. So yes, I would recommend people planting a wide variety of shrubs in their plantings or on their home their homesteads that they have.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that, Chris. And yeah, we'll provide some links there to information from our website about establishing windbreaks and what kind of to look for those trees, what's good for wildlife, that sort of thing. So any other resources that people could take a look at, Chris?
I would say, if you have a question, and you can go to our kansasforest.org webpage, you can look up who your district forester is, and they will be more than happy to tell you what's available. They might not tell you the exact location. They could tell you what shrubs would work well on your property, or what shrubs are already native to your area, and you could find that type of stuff. So feel free to reach out, give us a call, shoot us an email or whatever, and I'm sure we'd be more than happy to help with your future plans or finding fruit.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And any final words or advice or parting wisdom for folks listening today?
No, get outside, enjoy what we have here in Kansas. It is awesome, and I'm sure you'll have a blast. Make sure you wear bug spray this time of year. But just get outside and have fun, and make it an activity with your family. It is a lot of fun, and there'll be life lessons and life experiences that your kids or grandkids will enjoy. So get outside.
Yeah, that's probably the best advice we could give is get outside and go enjoy it while those fruits are ripe and ready to harvest. Awesome. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time this morning. Really appreciate it.
Excellent. Thanks for having me. We'll talk to you soon.
Yep, sounds good. So, all right, guys, that was Chris Mullins, our district forester down in South Central Kansas. So again, just a big thanks to Chris for spending time with us, talking about harvesting fruits here in Kansas. All right, hey everybody, I've got Karen Blakesley with me. She is an extension associate with K-State Research and Extension, and she is the coordinator of the Rapid Response Center and the co-director of the Kansas Value Added Foods Lab. Karen, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, Karen, can you tell me a little bit about your work with the Rapid Response Center and the Kansas Value Added Food Lab? What you do there and what those two are for?
Sure. So while they are two different jobs, they are connected in some way because the overarching umbrella is food science. And so the Rapid Response Center, I answer a lot of food related questions from extension agents, the general public, mostly extension agents. The program was designed to be a go-to source for the extension agents to help them answer questions from the public. Over time, it's evolved. I've been doing this for 21 years now, so it's changed some over the years, but it's become a pretty reliable resource, I would say, for the agents because most of them do not have a food science background. They might have some nutrition or health, but a lot of times when it gets into the food safety side of things, there's some lack of information out there, and that's fine. So that's what I'm here for. So I've been told that I'm kind of like an extension agent for extension agents. So it's kind of fun to be referred to that way. So answering a lot of food questions over the years, I've added other programs that I do, primarily teaching home food preservation. That's been a big one over the years. I've been out across the state teaching classes, answering lots of questions. This time of year in the summer months, with the fairs going on, I get involved with those, judging at fairs. So some of you may see me at a fair, maybe. I primarily stay up in the northeast part of Kansas, but and then also the state fair. I've worked with the Forage program with some food related programs over the years. So it's a lot of things on that side. That's just a brief look into that. The Kansas Value Added Foods Lab has been around for over 30 years. I recently, just last year, took over along with Dr. Kelly Getty. We are the co-directors of the lab now. The original director of the program, Dr. Fadi Aramoni, retired last year. So we are co-directing the lab. Dr. Getty has the credentials to be a process authority, which is needed. We work with a lot of small food processors across the state in helping them get their food business started. So we will help test their products, make sure that if they want to make it shelf stable, that it's safe at shelf stable, or it may require to be refrigerated, whatever. We'll check the quality about the product. We can also do nutrition facts labeling for their labels on their products. It's kind of fun because we get to work with a lot of great people across the state and outside the state who are trying to get a business started. And it also, we hire some undergraduate students to work in the lab, so they get experience in working with food products and gives them a taste of like research and development, quality control, nutrition labeling, whatever it is. So it's a wide variety of things that they can participate in. My role, I kind of keep track of the nutrition labeling, making sure that gets done properly. There's a lot of lot of ins and outs to that.
I bet.
And it can be quite complicated sometimes. You would think it'd be easy, but in some cases it's really not. So we
Yeah.
we really have to work hard to make sure we want to represent that product as accurately as possible. So because we have to comply with the Food and Drug Administration regulations.
Sure.
That's our overarching governing body, along with the Kansas Department of Agriculture. So we work closely with them. We get funding from them, so we thank them for that. So that's how our program is able to function. So anyway, that's kind of an overview of those two programs.
Yeah, I mean, what a valuable resource for small businesses and those extension agents. I can't imagine how costly that could be to bring in a private organization to help with that testing and developing and labeling.
Oh,
it's just got to be astronomical.
Well, what's nice about with the support we get from the Kansas Department of Agriculture for the value-added foods lab is that we can reduce our costs that we put out to do the tests. So it's at a much reduced rate than it would be if you went to an outside laboratory to do it. You would pay a lot more money to get that same kind of work done. So it's a benefit to the Kansas economy, the Kansas entrepreneurs. And the other thing, I will put a plug in for this. We also work with the Department of Ag's From the Land of Kansas program. And through that, entrepreneurs can sign up for that program. They pay a nominal fee for that and get a lot of services out of that fee. But one of them is we will even reduce the price of our services 30%. So it's an extra added benefit on top of that. And plus you get the support of that program, which is really good at marketing, and they can really help a small business get started and without a lot of investment in money, in time and money and services. So
yeah, we'll make sure to provide that link to the From the Land of Kansas there.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
I know I'm a big fan. If I see their sticker on any products in a local store, I'm like, oh, I know that was, that's a Kansas product. That's from
That's right. So that's right, because those products, they have to be made and produced here in Kansas. So it really is a great program.
Yeah. Well, and I hope a big part of your job, do you get to taste test a lot of the products? Like,
we do.
Oh man, that would be wonderful. You'd never have to pack a lunch.
Well, I do. I mean, we always check them first before we taste them to make sure we know that, that's probably, it's going to be a safe product for us to even taste. But yeah, that's part of research and development and as sensory analysis. And so we can provide some feedback. We can even set up a sensory analysis panel to have a product evaluated by consumers or whatever. We can work with clients on that also.
Where do I sign up to be a part of that pool of consumer panels? Because that sounds wonderful.
I know, isn't that fun? We put out just a generic call for it'll be through email services, that we have, or through the extension program. Somehow we'll get the word out. So we've kind of been not doing those right now because of the transition that we're trying to get our feet get ourselves on the ground. But one of these days we'll get back to doing that. So
perfect. Well, I will keep an eye out then. For that would be so much fun.
That's right.
So I know I want to circle back around.
Sure.
With you working really closely with extension agents, because I know a lot of times that county extension agent, whether they are the health and nutrition agent or if they're, like a single county agent serving a lot of program areas, I know you get a lot of amazing information to them and out to the public about safe home preservation. And it seems like there's been a big trend towards more and more people getting out and foraging those native fruits or other plants and
Mhm.
wanting to preserve those at home.
Sure,
Maybe it's a
sure.
result of COVID and we all had more time at home.
Well, that's part of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there was a big increase within the last year of people wanting to preserve their food at home. In fact,
Mhm,
it even translated to a shortage of equipment
mm,
to do this whole process, like
yeah.
especially the canning lids. There's been a real struggle for them to get
Mhm.
those canning lids back in the pipeline. So they're coming.
Yeah.
People just need to be patient a little bit, but they're
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah.
With the lack of employees to
Mhm,
do transportation, that's
mm,
been a big
mhm,
issue, a
mm,
really big issue. So anyway, but yes, there's a lot of new um, a lot of people planted gardens too, not
mhm,
along with going out and foraging, but
mhm.
along with that is what do you do with that food? So then
Yeah.
they got to figure that out. So
Yeah.
that's where we can help.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and there's just so much information out there, and it's hard to
Mhm.
know what's reliable and correct and safe. So I'm so glad that we can help connect more people to the resources that you guys provide.
Well, and that is a big problem because there's a lot of misinformation out there
Mhm,
as far as how to do this or what can be canned or
mhm,
preserved, I should say, safely. So it really is beneficial for everyone who is doing this or getting started to come to us and ask us. We've got lots of publications. I've got a website that's just
mhm, mhm.
stocked full of information.
Yeah.
Um, and so we also we haven't in the last year done any in-person classes, but
Mhm,
we're going to be getting back to doing that. I know that some have done some online classes. That's
mhm,
another way to learn. Um, and there's other states that do those also that I'm willing to promote because
mhm.
we're all in this together. So
Right. Yeah.
there's some really good ways to find good, reliable, safe information on home
Yeah.
food preservation.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what are some of those common challenges that you see with first time or new folks that are getting into home preservation?
Well, probably the first thing is where are you going to learn how to do it?
Mhm,
Who's your teacher?
mhm,
And I often hear that and I'm not, no offense to mom or grandma, but I
mhm.
commonly hear that my mom
Yeah.
taught me, my grandma taught me, here's what, or my neighbor taught me, whatever. But a lot of times there may be methods that they're using that may not be safe anymore. Things have changed over the
Mhm,
years. And so where there are some things that used to be done in the past that are not recommended anymore.
mhm,
For example, I this one comes up a lot about canning green beans. I know this
mhm,
is not a wild product, but still, it's a vegetable and it's very common. But a lot of people will water bath those. Those cannot be water bath. They have to be pressure canned because they are a low acid food. And
mhm, mhm,
so if you don't know, if you come across a food product out when you're foraging, how do you know that it could be canned safely or preserved safely?
mhm.
Especially the canning side. You can freeze pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Um, Not everything survives freezing very well,
Mhm,
but
mhm,
most things do. And the freezing process, changes the water formation, how the
mhm,
water moves within the fruit or the vegetable or whatever it is. And so it's not stellar quality
mhm,
when you bring it out of the freezer, but it's still good, it's still usable. But when it comes to canning, understanding what is a low and a high acid food is half the battle right there.
mhm,
And there are some examples that we've recently found out. Elderberries, for
mhm,
example,
mhm,
very popular. People like to can elderberries, make jam or jelly out of elderberries. Well, we've learned that over time, the acidity of elderberries has changed, and there was a recent study done here within the last year between Missouri and Oregon. They tested 400 varieties of elderberries and found that the average acidity of them puts them in a low acid food category.
Wow.
So they're not like a blackberry. They're not like a strawberry. They're not like a raspberry. Those are more of a high acid food. Elderberries are more low acid. So knowing how to can those is important, really important. And there are some recommendations on how to make a jam or a jelly. There's specific instructions on how to do that, but we do not recommend just canning them like any other berry because they are a low acid food. So I know that's might be news to a lot of people, but this has just come out here recently. So I wanted to particularly bring that one up because elderberries are so popular. And I do have a link to that information. I have a website, and it's my Rapid Response Center website, which is www.rrc.ksu.edu. And there is a section on food preservation. And right on that homepage for that section, you'll see a purple graphic about elderberries. So people can go to that and find the information related to that. So it's what's grown in the wild is not always, equal to what's grown domestically. So that's something to be aware of.
Yeah. Well, in elderberry, it is so prominent, it seems. If you've driven down any highway or gravel road in Kansas, it's in waterways and
Yes.
pasture.
Oh, we
it's
had
in
them on
road
our
ditches. It's
farm.
everywhere.
Yeah. We had them on the farm I grew up on too. So
Yeah.
yeah, they're all over the place.
Yeah. And they're one of the plants that we sell every year with our conservation seedling program. So they're very popular on that as well. So some of the other ones that I see that tend to be really popular are also the sandhill plum.
Yes.
I know harvest has been hit and miss on those the last couple years with our late freezes, but it sounds like in western Kansas there's a ton of them out there right now.
Yeah, I wish I had some myself. I grew up, we had them in our pastures, so we would always go out. And, they're not easy to pick, but they are really tasty to make them into a jelly. So yeah, sand plums are really popular all over the place, and here in Kansas, and not just in Kansas, but in other states too, here in the plains area. So they are a wild product. One thing I would be careful about is knowing knowing where whose land you're getting on. And I'm sure you'll talk about that in another with your next guest. So always make sure you know whose land it is. Ask them before you can go in to make sure, because if it's in a pasture, they might have cattle out there, and they don't want you to leave the gates open. So that's things to think about. You just can't randomly stop and do that. The other thing to think about is, did they spray any any kind of chemicals on the pastures? That's possible, so be aware of that. And with any kind of food, after you've picked it, wash them really well. Pick out any damaged products, because you want to start with the best food possible in any preservation practice that you do, because if you start with bad food, you're still going to have bad food. That's kind of my theory on that. So make sure you wash them well, pick out the fruits or whatever it is that don't look so good, sort those out, and then proceed from there. Now, sand plums are really popular to make jelly out of. That's what we did when I was growing up, and getting those. And it's really simple. You can just use the the plum jelly recipe that's in the pectin packets that comes with that works really well. The North Dakota State University has a publication called Jams and Jellies from Native Wild Fruits, and they have a recipe in there for wild plum jam. So that would be another one that could be used. I think that's probably the most popular things that people use those for. You could even, if you don't have time to make the jam or jelly now, you could make, at least get the juice, get the fruit juiced, and you can freeze that, and then you can use that later when you have more time to make a jam or a jelly. So that's another option with that.
Yeah. What are some of the other common fruits that you see people harvesting or foraging in Kansas?
Well, one that I've often get questions about is choke cherries. That's another one that I get questions about. And in that same publication I just talked about from North Dakota State, they have a choke cherry jelly recipe in there. That one uses a liquid pectin instead of dry pectin. But they also, I should say, they have both. They have one with liquid, one with powdered pectin, so you have the choice. But choke cherries are really good to use in jellies also. Gooseberries is another one, really popular in pie. I usually see one show up at a fair that I judge at. But gooseberries can be used in making jam also. So that publication also has a gooseberry recipe for jam in that. I don't know if anybody has rose hips. That's another one that you might see around here. So you can use rose hips to make a jam, or even there's a jelly that has apple juice with it too, along with the rose hip juice. So those are some examples of some fruits that are out there that people often look for.
Yeah, no, I know around my house at home, my grandpa apparently at some point started a bunch of gooseberry because that was always his favorite pie. So the house is just, and the timber around it, they're everywhere.
Sure.
So again, they can be a little challenging to get in and pick.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and another one is crab apples. You know, there's a lot of crab apple trees around, so you can make crab apple jelly out of that, but you can also use those to in regular recipes too. So so yeah, that's another one that I'm thinking of that's pretty popular.
Yeah. Well, now I have to ask this question because I have a neighbor that had a recipe for homemade wine as well. I think he used elderberry for it a lot. And I believe his directions, he shared them with me once, and I never was brave enough to try it. He would basically use a 5-gallon bucket system for making wine at home. And I kind of questioned.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can, there are stores that sell winemaking equipment, probably more over in the Kansas City area or Wichita area maybe. But also you can go online and look for winemaking equipment and just follow their instructions on how to do that. So yeah, that's popular to use elderberries or even some of these other fruits that I've talked about and convert those into wine. A lot of people like to experiment. It can be a very safe process because you are fermenting it, and it does change the acidity of it. It changes the sugar content and all that. So it does go through a transformation to make it into a wine product. How it turns out, how tasty it is always the surprise in the end. But so it is kind of fun to try. I'm sure there's probably even winemaking clubs around different locations so that people can get together and learn from each other on that. So now we haven't really done any of that. Like I do know that Highland Community College has a wine making program up there. So if you're looking to get more education on that, I think I would recommend that because they've really put together a good program up there on that particular product. We do teach some fermentation classes here for the students, but we
Sure.
don't necessarily teach that ourselves through extension.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah,
So have to definitely look into that, because I've always thought it would be fun to try to make wine at home, but I've
yeah,
never taken the time to really
sure.
try it
Well,
out.
and it does take some time.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. You got to have yeah, you kind of can get it started and let it set, but you still have to take care of it. So,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
mhm.
So let's say if somebody listening is maybe trying canning or preservation for the first time, and they do want to make some sandhill plum jelly, they go through the process and make it. How do they know then afterwards that it's safe to eat, or what might be some of the signs that
Okay.
something's gone awry along the way?
Sure, sure. Well, the first step is starting with good recipes,
Mhm.
which I've kind of been talking about already.
Yeah.
Come to us. We can
Mhm.
help find you good recipes. So that's the first step,
Mhm.
and making sure that you're following the directions properly, knowing how your equipment works, going through the steps properly. We have two how-to guides. One is for water bath canning, one is for pressure canning, to at least step you through the process. You still
Mhm.
need to follow the recipes, but at least it's a guide to get you through the process of either water bath canning or pressure canning.
Mhm.
So that's another thing to know how your equipment works, and making sure that it's in good condition before you get started. If you
Mhm.
wait till the last minute, nowadays it's really hard to find replacement parts for things. So
Sure. Yeah.
so just be aware of that. So you've gone through the process. I guess the first sign to look at is if the lid seals or not.
Mhm.
The two-piece lid system, it's a flat metal lid with a metal ring.
Mhm.
And so that lid should pull a vacuum. So it should be concave,
Mhm.
which means it's got to curve down. It should not be popping up and down after you've let the jars cool and test it to see if the jars are sealed. After you've taken the jars out of the canner, just let them set. Don't touch the lids or the rings or anything. Excuse me. Let the cooling process happen naturally. Let the lids seal themselves.
Mhm.
Wait for 24 hours before you start handling the jars or the lids or anything. Um, and then over time, storing your products, you can take the rings off. And actually, that's a good idea, because if something does change, if the food changes, excuse me, and if a spoilage is starting to happen, your lids might become unsealed. You'll notice it more
Mhm.
easily that way. So take the rings off. You probably need the rings to make more stuff. So, so take the rings off. But over time, put them in a cool, dark, dry, dark location, away from
Mhm.
light, away from heat. That's the best storage conditions. We recommend using any home canned products within a year. That's for best safety, best quality. Signs to look for if things are changing.
Mhm.
Look for any color changes. Um, if it's a red product and it's turned brown, something's changing.
Yeah.
For example, look for any bubbles inside the jar that are moving on their own.
Mhm.
If that's happening, there's probably some fermentation. There's something forming, something that's building gas inside
Mhm.
that jar. Any kind of leakage on the outside of the lid area, or even down the outside of the jar, that's whatever's growing inside is pushing the liquid out.
Mhm.
So look for that. Um, when you open the jar, smell, use your
Mhm.
nose, see if you smell anything that just is not right.
Right. Yeah.
And if it doesn't smell right, it doesn't look right, please don't taste it. I often get that question. Well, I tasted it and I'm still okay. Oh, that is so risky,
Yeah.
because you just don't know what's inside that jar. If
Mhm.
something doesn't look right, doesn't smell right, and if you taste it, even just sticking your pinky finger in there and taking a little taste, it could make you sick. And we do not want that to happen to you.
Mhm.
So those are kind of some of the basic things. I mean, use your eyes, use your nose, just don't taste anything.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
if you see anything that just doesn't look right, just throw it out.
Yeah.
Don't use it at all.
Mhm.
It's just not worth the risk. And that's why, you can. That's why we always encourage everybody to use good recipes to start with. There's a lot of really good recipes out there that have been tested, they've been researched, and the recipes have been built so that they can be the safest possible. And if you start with that, your success is going to be increased so much. Um, and doing the process right really helps also.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, there's definitely a lot to learn. And
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, I'm new into canning and preservation myself. I'm one of those people that was very much like, oh, my grandma used to do that, but nobody's ever taught me. So I'm going to try to
Hmm.
plant a garden and go start foraging, and I'm going to
Hmm.
learn.
Well,
But
another one that I've heard of is dandelion jelly. People have used
mhm.
dandelions.
Yeah.
I'd be careful about that because technically dandelions are a low acid food.
Mhm.
So be careful about
Yeah.
that, on what kind of recipe that you're using.
Mhm. Mhm.
So while they're edible to eat them fresh,
Yeah.
that when you put things inside of a canning jar, it's a whole different living environment, I guess you
Yeah.
could call it, for that food.
Mhm.
It's very different than eating it fresh.
Yeah.
So that's why there's so much more safety into that.
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
a lot of things you can freeze.
Yeah.
All these berries that we've been talking about, all of those could be frozen and easily, just washing them, making sure they're clean, spread them out on a cookie sheet and freeze them. And then once they're
Mm.
rock hard, then put them into a package.
Mhm.
And that's a really easy way to freeze all
Yeah.
those.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. Yeah, because for me, I would have thought, oh, I just wash them and toss them in the bag and freeze them right away. But it makes a lot of
Well,
sense to.
usually they'll end up in one big frozen clump
Well,
if you do that.
yeah.
So freeze them on a cookie sheet first, and
Yeah.
then they will be more individual when
Well,
you put them into a freezer package.
man,
See, there you
that's
go.
that's a pro tip right there. I never would have thought to freeze them
That's
individually.
right. That's right.
That's gonna be a game
Yeah,
changer.
that's right.
But
So, and most of those things, you don't have to add any sugar to them. You could just
yeah.
freeze them as they are on a cookie sheet, and then
Mhm.
package them in a freezer package. So,
Yeah, man, I'm gonna have to get a bigger deep freeze. I just have a small chest freezer. It might be time to
yeah,
invest in a
it
larger
does take
one.
up some space, that's for
Yeah,
sure. So,
yeah.
and we've got lots of information on freezing and
Yeah.
dehydrating too.
Oh,
So, if you're
mhm,
into
mhm.
dehydrating, that would be another way to
Yeah.
preserve your food.
Yeah. Oh man, so much great information. And we'll link to all of that in the show notes for the podcast episode,
Okay,
and help promote it on our social media too, because
excellent.
I know like I love just being able to get out and go pick some fruit or forage or harvest. It's a
Hmm.
great way to get outdoors and just enjoy that time, and then have a tasty treat for
Good.
at the end of it too. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So
Absolutely.
Karen, I want to ask, how did you get into food safety and preservation, and what was your journey like to get there?
Well, it honestly, it really just kind of fell in my lap. But I did go to school here at K-State in food
Mhm.
science. I got my
Mm,
bachelor's in food science. I went out and worked in the food industry and food manufacturing for about 12 years.
mhm,
And then I came back here and got my master's degree in foods and nutrition.
mm,
Went back out into the food industry for a couple years, but then the job I have now opened up, and I almost ran back here. So I was really, really happy to come back here. And the food preservation side of it, the one of the faculty members that I worked with when I first started here, she did that type of work. She was doing education on that. And then when she retired, they the extension agents just really were wanting somebody to do that. So I
Mhm,
just learned. I just started learning about it and
mm,
taught
mhm,
myself and found out who the experts are in the field from other universities. One of the primary resources that I leaned on was the National Center for Home Food Preservation, which is at the University of Georgia. And so learned a lot from colleagues across the country about it. And I've just slowly learned different things over the years about this whole process and met some really great people and been across the state to help teach people about it. And hopefully that's been helpful.
Yeah. Oh, well, I know the resources that I've looked at online from the Rapid Response Center and Research and Extension, both locally, has been just phenomenal. So I hope everybody listening to this goes and checks it out and then tells their friends and family about it, because it is such a valuable resource to have.
Well, thank you. I hope so too, because there's a lot of information there, and you gotta educate yourself. Do your homework before you do any of this. I guess that's another big thing I would say is do your homework. Don't just jump into it without knowing what you're doing, because it could be disastrous in the end, and we don't want that to happen. So
yeah, botulism doesn't sound like
it is no fun. And honestly, there's a video out from Utah State University from a lady that did get botulism from not canning her green beans properly, and she was lucky to live, really lucky. And you don't want to wish that on anybody. It's a horrible thing to go through, and everything that she did wrong could have easily been prevented easily if she just would have gotten herself educated first. So do your homework. Please.
Yes, ma'am. Just a few small steps along the way can save a lot of trouble down the road.
Exactly.
Oh gosh. Well, Karen, thank you so much for your time. Do you have anything else to add for our listeners, or words of advice or wisdom?
Well, I just encourage everybody, if you got questions, call your local extension offices. There's an office in every county. And if you can't find them I know phone books probably may not exist much anymore, but look us up on the internet. We're there. We are there to help you. And if they don't have the answer, they're going to find somebody that knows the answer. And when it comes to food related things, they're probably going to call me, which is great. And I'm glad to help. But just be mindful, be smart about preserving your food, be smart about going about out and foraging your food. It's a great outdoor activity. I think it's, that's a great way to explore nature and learn about different foods that way. But also be smart about it, and do your homework. I've said that several times now about preserving it, and just give us a call. We'd be glad to help you out.
Awesome. Well, Karen, thank you again. And thanks to everybody listening. Make sure you go check out the Rapid Response Center and all the other resources that Karen has worked so hard to put together and share. Definitely check out From the Land of Kansas. And if you're interested in getting into home preservation or starting a business where you're selling a food product, definitely look up those resources and get in touch.
Absolutely.
So. All right. Well, Karen, thank you again. And I'm really looking forward to hopefully seeing you at the local fair or down the road.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Cassie.
Yep. Take care. Thank you.
Uh-huh.